Welcome to episode 141 of the Family Answer Man podcast. Today we're talking about children of divorce and the depression that they experience from a biblical worldview here on the Family Answer Man podcast. I'm your host, David Orgis, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Crosby. He is a pastor, educator, he is a mental health professional, and the resident expert here on the Family Answer Man. Family Answer Man is not a therapy session. We can't give you specific advice to your situation. So for in-depth answers to your questions, we want to encourage you to seek professional counsel for those circumstances that may be unique to your situation. Before we jump in, I want to encourage you to hit the notification bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us out a lot. You'll never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. And if you're listening via podcast, if you will rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app, again, that helps us out a lot. And you can, as always, invite your friends and your family to join you on this journey of building a stronger, healthier, and happier family. Dr. Mark, good to be here with you today.
Yes.
We have a good topic, a topic that I think a lot of people have either dealt with or maybe have asked this question themselves.
Absolutely.
Dealing with children and the depression that they experience in divorce. Is that a big risk that happens all the time?
Yes, unfortunately, it is a very big risk because the reality is that, according to our recent stats, 50% of all married couples will end up getting divorced. Of those that are getting divorced in that 50 percentile, 80 to 90% have children between ages of birth to 18 or 17.
You know that you hear the statistic about the divorce rate, but you don't often hear about how many of those marriages have children involved.
And so because of that, what you're seeing now is this great disruption in the lives of children. Whenever there's a great disruption of this level, of this magnitude, and for this length of time, depression is going to kick in because they've lost their sense of structure, they've lost their sense of security, their sense of stability, in some cases their sense of safety. And so when that happens, children begin to figure out, what can I do? They don't have the resources, they don't have the coping mechanisms in many cases. Are they resilient? Some are, but not all. And so the point simply is that for many, they wind up in this state of perpetual sadness, which is what we call depression. And they just don't do well academically, they don't do well relationally, they don't do well in interpersonal relationships within their family. They push back. Some get in a state of anger. And we'll talk about this more in a moment. But children, for the most part, who are depressed are consistently angry, consistently acting out, consistently pushing back, consistently being defiant, and the list could go on. And so, again, depression is a real thing in the lives of children, especially when their atmosphere, their family, their source of security is now disrupted. Yeah. And there's no sense of consistency. There's no sense of a permanent place. There's no sense of who could I count on? And then there's loyalty, conflicts as well. Am I loyal to mom? Am I loyal to dad? And then to make matters worse, some parents will even place their children as the spies. Tell me what your mom's doing. Is her boyfriend still staying there? Tell me what your dad's doing. Is he still going out? Does he leave y'all alone? And so now the children are now acting as spies. Sometimes children are the confidants or counselors of the parent, and so lots of things begin to happen to children of various ages and stages of life that they're not able to handle. And because they feel so overwhelmed, as anybody, when you feel overwhelmed, eventually you begin to feel the sense of sadness, this overwhelming sense of discomfort, and then, of course, depression.
Which you can see how all of those circumstances could easily, like you said, lead to a place of depression.
Absolutely.
If you have a question and you want to have that answered on the Family Answer Man, we'd love to do that. You can always email in your questions, familyanswerman@liveoak.church. Familyanswerman@liveoak.church is our email address. And this is the question that we have for today. It says, my daughter and my son-in-law divorced about a year ago. My grandchildren seem to be depressed and sad all the time. I never thought that divorce would be this hard on children. Is extreme depression normal, and what can a grandparent do?
Yeah, so is it normal? I would say it's common. Okay, I think it's a better word.
Okay.
And so, yes, it's very common because children are traumatized when there's conflict. Children, by their very nature, is wanting a sense of security. They're wanting a sense of stability. They want a sense of safety. They want a sense, basically, of structure. And they love the routine, and they love to know what's going to happen the next day and the next morning, and they want tomorrow morning to be like yesterday. And so they want this structure, this stability, this safety, this security. And when there's conflict in the home, in many cases, that no longer is a reality. Not only that, but when divorce occurs, these things now, for a while, or for a long season, are shattered. And so when the divorce happens, they don't have the structure they used to have, because now I have to go to dad's house, or I have to go to mom's house, or I have to bring my things, and things are important to kids, right?
They are. They really are. If you have, I have a 4-year-old, and man, I can tell you things are important to children.
And so what happens to a lot of families is mom doesn't want, dad's things in her house, or dad doesn't want what mom's things are, in his house. And so there's this conflict over that. And so this traumatic moment that happens in the life of children is very real. And a lot of parents don't think of this as being a traumatic event in the life of the children, but it really is. And so children of conflict are traumatized. Now, the reality is that conflict is on the spectrum. There's mild conflict that most parents, I think, will create in their home. It's what I call seasonal moments, quarreling, as we used to say, arguing, disagreeing, whatever. And so there's that mild conflict. Then there's moderate conflict. These are the louder arguments. These are the accusations. These are the pounding, the table. These are those moments where you're loud and doors are slammed or whatever. And that begins to impact children even more. And then there's moderate to severe, where there's actual violence, where maybe a parent is being pushed or shoved or hit, maybe where things are broken, maybe even when police are called. And this too, again, becomes very impactful on the life of the child. And then there's severe, where someone is in danger, maybe there's a severe addiction, maybe there's outside sources coming in, boyfriends or whomever coming in, or maybe there's a mental illness that's severe, someone is hospitalized, and the list could go on. So conflict's on the spectrum. The point is that children do not have, at this moment in their development, they do not have the coping mechanisms, for the most part, to manage this level of conflict.
Okay.
They don't know what to do, because their parents are to be the architects of their environment. Their parents are to be their source of security. Their parents are to be their source of stability and structure. And now the parents are providing this, because they're in their own, war, so to speak. And so high conflict is a reality. It creates high distress, not only among the parents, but among the children. It creates an extreme sense of anger among the parents, but also the children. The children are angry about this. They're not quite sure how to express their anger initially, but they will maybe express it at school. They're more likely to get into a fight. They're more likely to steal from someone. They're more likely to get in a fight on the bus. They're more likely to bully a smaller child. They're more likely to do some of these things. They're more likely to say things and do things where someone may want to bully them. They may steal someone's, lunchbox or whatever, or something along those lines, or steal someone's money, or steal someone's, iPhone or whatever. And what happens is that now they've done something to create conflict between them and those around them and their peers. That's the point. Also, too, when there's high conflict, there's frequent litigation. And we see that a lot among parents of high conflict. The divorce is pending, or the divorce has occurred, but there's ongoing problems between the parents. I'm going to bring you to court. I'm going to bring you to court. You're not going to let me see my kids this weekend. I'm going to bring you to court. You're not going to pay for the kids' soccer practice. I'm going to bring you to court. And so there's this frequent litigation. And the sad truth is, what parents will spend on attorney fees, they can send their kids to Harvard. And so this is the great misfortune that we see whenever divorce occurs. So there's criticism in the family, there's hostility in the family, there's blame in the family, and even worse is a lack of empathy. When the husband says, I don't care what happens to my ex-wife, I don't care, or the wife says, I don't care what happens to my ex-husband, I wish he were dead, I wish she were dead, that kind of thing. And sometimes they may not say it, sometimes they do, but they definitely, but they definitely, imply it.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot there. And the sad truth is the child is watching this like watching a tennis match.
It's back and forth.
Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And what happens is because the parents are so focused on the conflict between themselves, they forget about the needs of the child. They forget the child needs, warmth and love and care and nurture. And they may still do the basics. There's food on the table,
Right.
there's a warm bed, so to speak. But even then, we'll talk about in a moment, that becomes disruptive, during really high conflict situations where the mom, or in some cases even the dad, has to grab and run. Because he's come home drunk, or there's a gun in the house, or they're threatening severe violence. So these things really do create a sense of disconnect and a sense of distress among children, causing this depression.
Well, yeah, and just that list of that you went through right there, that any of us can imagine how that would be distressing to us as adults
Right.
who hopefully already have built coping skills, but for somebody that doesn't have them, it's debilitating.
That's right. So the emotional reactivity that happens in the home, again, the fighting and the arguing, the cursing and the threatening, again, and maybe even efforts to alienate the child. Sometimes a mom will say to the husband, "You'll never see these kids again," or the dad will say, "You'll never see these kids again." Or when they do have the children, they tell all the stories, all the dirt, if you will, on the other parent. Let me tell you about what your mother really did. Let me tell you what your dad really did. Let me tell you how he did this or why we're divorcing. Let me kind of give you all the, and so a 10-year-old can't handle that. Sometimes a 12-year-old can't handle that. But they're hearing all this dirt on their mom or their dad, or they want to sympathize with the parent who is hurting and look at the other parent as the villain. And so basically now there's this sense of alienation going on. Be on my team, be on my side because your dad is wrong or your mom is wrong. She's the one that ran around. He's the one that, did this or did that. So there's this efforts now to alienate the child. And so now there's these loyalty conflicts that occur. So all these things are so overwhelming, the child doesn't know what to do. So what do? You go into depression. You want to simply push back against all the people that are coming against you, saying things. You want to kind of basically just take the covers, as we used to say, and pull them up over your head, and hope and pray that one day this will go away. But in the life of the child, it really never does. And so this is the impact on the child. So there's this chronic stress. So children who go through high conflict divorce will experience what's called chronic stress. They're always on guard. They're always worried as to what's going to happen next. They're always worried as to who's going to be angry. They're always worried about who's going to cause some suffering. They're always worried about who's going to make the latest threat. Children know far more about court, unfortunately, in these situations than they should. They learn far more about the weaknesses of their parents than they should. So there's this chronic stress that takes place. Again, as we said earlier, there's loyalty conflict. Who do I line up with? For some adolescent boys, they'll line up with their dad because, mom did this or mom did that. For some teenage girls, they line up with their mom because dad did this and dad did that. And so there's this gender connection, if you will. That's not true in every case. Sometimes it's just the opposite. But there does seem to be a sense of consistency that the genders line up, especially after the age of, say, 12 or 13. Because most adolescent boys, they learn how to be a man from their dad. Most adolescent girls learn how to be a woman from their mom.
Right.
And so at this age and stage of life, they're trying to figure that out. And so here we go. So there's that chronic stress. There's loyalty conflicts. There's emotional distress. The emotional distress is, I would like to feel good again. I would like to have fun again. I'd like to feel, myself again. I'd like to be happy again. And so what happens is that this is where, unfortunately, drug addiction becomes reality. Because if they take something that makes them feel a sense of euphoria, if they take something that begins to block, the emotional pain, if they take something that gives them a sense of feeling good, then now this becomes a gateway to addiction. Because they have not felt good in a long time.
Right.
And this kid on the bus or this kid at PE class or this kid, down the street has this stuff that makes me feel good about life.
It's an answer to a problem that they have.
Yeah.
You've used this phrase before, but an illegitimate way to meet a legitimate need.
Exactly. And so this is what begins to occur in the life of these children. Something else we don't think about initially when a couple is going through divorce, and that's financial instability. You have to recognize that, again, no matter how much you think everything's going to belong to you, in most cases, it's cut in half. The savings, the child support, all these things that occur create now, at least initially, a financial instability. Depending how long you've been married, depending on your income and all this. But there's financial instability now that occurs that now limits children. So whenever, the income's cut in half, and whenever child support is extremely high or whatever it may be, even though child support's important and it should be paid, it still begins to limit the financial situation in the home. And so this limits children's academic opportunities. So again, if you're going to a private school, in some cases, I've seen children have to go to a public school. If you're going to maybe an event that costs a lot of money, maybe it's a field trip, or maybe it's a conference or something along those lines, you may not be able to go this time because you don't have the financial means. It limits academic opportunities. You can't pay the soccer fee, you can't pay the baseball fee, you can't pay for the uniform, you can't pay for the coaching, tutoring, whatever it may be. And so financial instability begins to impact a child, both in their academic as well as maybe in their extracurricular activities. So this financial instability becomes reality, especially if the children are now living with mom. Maybe mom's income is limited. Now she has to find an apartment in some cases, or she has to pay most of the mortgage on the house or whatever it may be. And so now there is a lot of instability in the home. Thirdly, in some cases, if you're keeping count, there's often a loss of father involvement. Whenever there is divorce, I see this to people who are contemplating divorce, just know you're about to be a part-time parent. Just know that part of, again, the side effect of divorce is you will become a part-time parent. And there's no getting around that. Yeah. And when I first say that to a couple, they look at me like deer in the headlights. Or sometimes they even get angry, because now this cold reality is slapping them in the face. Right. Because it's like, really, a part-time parent? So yeah, you may not see them on some Christmases. You may miss some of their birthdays. You may not be invited to their wedding reception or to their wedding rehearsal. You may not be invited to their graduation. You may, or whatever it may be. So you become a part-time parent. And what that means in some cases is that for some, there's a loss of the father's involvement in the life of the child. Unfortunately, some dads, even to this day, only see their children 5 to 7 days out of the month because of the child rotation and schedule, visitation schedule. And so now what happens is this creates a negative impact on the child's development because there's a lack of paternal involvement. What this does in many cases is that it decreases the identity formation that many young men need, many of the adolescent males need. So what happens is boys, for example, experience worse academic and behavioral outcomes. Dad's not there to encourage them to play sports or encourage them to do well in school or encourage them to do well on their tests, whatever. And because the young men or the boys or whatever are depressed because their dad's not in the home or whatever, they begin to act out. And again, for smaller children under the age of 12, in many cases, when they are depressed, they act out. Older kids will withdraw, but younger kids will begin to act out. So what happens is when the father's not involved, then most boys experience academic problems. They experience behavioral problems. They experience, delinquency and truancy. For girls, they have a higher rate of depression and anxiety. When dad is not involved, they have a higher rate of depression and anxiety. And unfortunately, the research indicates that girls of high conflict families, girls of high conflict divorce are more likely to begin motherhood earlier, more likely to get pregnant earlier, and more likely to have what I call, or what many call, a premature marriage, which means they get married under the age of 20. So high conflict homes, again, you're more likely to get married earlier under the age of 20 if you're a girl, motherhood, pregnancies, etc. And what that does is that sets up, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, it sets up a girl for failure. The divorce rate is staggering for girls who get married before the age of 20 years old. You just don't have the cognitive, behavioral, relational skills to maintain that level of relationship and what is required of you. You just don't. The brain continues to develop until the age of 25. Now, again, for the listeners out there, that's not to say that everybody under the age of 20 fails in their marriage. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you're more likely to, based on the research that's out there. And most of us, if all you have to do is think about the people you know who got married under the age of 20 and look at see what happened in most cases. Again, this is not a judgment call. This is simply what the research indicates. So here's the question this grandfather's asking. So if you just tuned in, where there's a grandfather asking, look, my kids are going through a divorce. My grandkids seem depressed. What can I do as a grandparent? So if you're just tuning in, this is where we are. This is what we're talking about. So what can be done? So number one, I think it's very important that that supportive, extended family, grandparents, even aunts and uncles, be a reality. So if you're a grandparent and you have grandchildren whose parents are going through a divorce, try to be there for them. Invite them over as much as possible. Ask and see if you can pick them up and take them fishing, or take them, to the movies, or take them, to get ice cream, or whatever you can do. Just whatever you can, go to their ball games, go to their dance recitals, go to their piano recitals, whatever you can do to be a support. So when they're, playing in the ball game, or they're kicking the soccer ball, whatever, and they look in the stands and they look in the sidelines, grandma, grandpa, you're there to support them. Aunts and uncles, the same thing. Sometimes as aunts and uncles, we don't realize how important it is to be involved and invested in the lives of our nieces and nephews. Next, what can be done? Church resources, youth pastors, listen. Be sensitive to those kids whose parents are going through a divorce in your youth group. Create, a relationship with them. Make sure they are able to go to the summer camps. Make sure they're able to go to the youth retreat. Make sure they're able to go to the overnight, bonfire or whatever's going on, the overnight lock-in or whatever it may be. But make sure they're able to go. Parents, get involved with your kids. Go to the parent-child interacting opportunity, the father-daughter dance, or the retreat, the father-son retreat, whatever it may be. But churches, beware that, again, the kids in your youth program who are going through, whose parents are going through a divorce, they need you.
And that's such a great perspective, because I think a lot of times that can get overlooked, and it can be a difficult thing to try to minister to a kid that's as much in and out of your ministry as they are in and out of their home, but it means they need even more.
Well, they do. I mean, especially if the father is going to now be absent, for 20 days, 23 days out of the month. They will need that role model. They'll need that male affirmation. They'll need that pat on the back. They need to know that there are people there for them. Community resources are important. There's a lot of community resources that offer counseling and mentoring and educational support. So beware of that. Next, for co-parents, beware of, or if you're a co-parent, if you will, create strategies for education. Create strategies for education. Make sure that you're on the same page. Hey, this week, little Johnny's got a spelling test on Friday. This week, is the school, project, fair or whatever. This week we have, the ACT coming up or whatever it may be. But be, again, involved in your child's education and be as cooperative as you can. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Create, again, scholarships for extracurricular activities. Grandparents, be the one who may need to pay for the piano lessons or the jujitsu lessons or whatever. But grandparents, that's what you can do. If little Johnny wants to take jujitsu, if little Susie wants to take piano lessons, or vice versa, okay, create that scholarship. Go to that place, go to that instructor and say, look, I'll be paying for their lessons. I'll be paying for their tuition, whatever it may be. Also, grandparents, you can also pay for whatever school activities that are needed or required, and maybe even pay for their mental health services. Because sometimes these kids may need to talk to a counselor because of the depression or the anxiety that they're experiencing. So again, bottom line, as a grandparent, of grandchildren who are going through a divorce, or even as a concerned family member, keep track of certain issues. Grandma, grandpa, if you're listening, ask yourself, what emotions has your grandchild expressed about the changes in their family? They may say to you, Grandma, Grandpa, I'm feeling depressed. Grandma, Grandpa, I hate it when Mommy says this about Dad, or I hate it when Dad says this about Mom. So keep track of the emotions that you're seeing among your grandchildren. Not only that, but what changes have you noticed in your grandchild's mood, or their well-being? Are they seeming to be happier now than before? Are they sadder than they were before? Are they angrier than before? Are they getting in more trouble? Are you hearing from the teachers? Are you hearing from the principal? Hey, look, he's constantly doing this. She's constantly doing that. Here's one. How does the grandchild react when there's a disagreement? So in other words, you're watching your grandchild and maybe they're at your home, you're taking them fishing, and you say to your grandchild, hey, look, leave this alone or don't touch that. And they kind of bow up at you, or they kind of push back, or they defy you. Or you say, hey, look, don't eat before, this time because we're going to have dinner at 5:00. We want you to have a good appetite. And they say, I do what I want, kind of thing. So how does a child react when there's a disagreement? Monitor what's going on there. And again, be noticing, is there more stomach aches or headaches in the life of your grandchild? So when they're at your house, are they complaining about stomach aches, headaches? Are they complaining about, certain other psychosomatic concerns? What does a child say about their parent? So when they're with you, grandma, grandpa, and the child's with you, what do they say about maybe your former daughter-in-law or your former son-in-law? Or do they say, mommy's always this, or daddy's always that, or mommy has 3 new boyfriends, or daddy is never home, or whatever, daddy comes home drunk, what are they saying? So be mindful and be listening. Not only that, but how do they see God in the church? If you invite them to go to church with you, do they push back, or are they ready to go? Do they want to go? Do they say, I don't believe there's God? So just be mindful as a grandparent, because again, you may be the only source or sense of stability that's in their life right now. Yeah. So again, some may ask, are there any personality types more prone to divorce? So we've talked about this before. Unfortunately, the narcissist, is more prone because life's all about them. They don't believe in giving. They only believe in taking. The borderline personality, very impulsive in their relationship, very on again, off again. I love you, I hate you, I hate you, I love you. It's called the borderline personality. And then there's the antisocial personality type, of course, that has no feelings, no sense of conscientiousness. And so they basically use people for their own gain. And so all of these, again, are very difficult to be in a relationship with. So be mindful of that. Also, again, those who have a paranoid personality also is a very difficult one to be married to, because they're always accusing you of infidelity and that sort of thing. So again, what can divorcing parents do? If you're going through a divorce right now, if you've just tuned in, we're looking at, again, children of parents who are divorced and the depression they go through. So what can you do? If you're just listening to this, we've got 2 minutes left. So again, here it is in a nutshell. Seek to be civil. Seek to be cooperative. You're going to want the other one to be cooperative with you, so you be cooperative with them. If not, you're going to get on the crazy cycle. I'm not going to do it. You're not going to do it. I don't care. You don't care. Seek consideration and seek communication. So again, be cooperative, be civil, be considerate, be willing to communicate. Also seek church involvement. This is not the time to withdraw your child from what God can do in their life. So seek church involvement. Seek counseling. Maybe for yourself, maybe even for your ex or with your ex, and definitely with your children. Seek Christ in all of this. Seek His grace. Seek His forgiveness. Not only that, but seek the child's best interest. Mom, Dad, I know you're going through a divorce. Mom, Dad, I know life's tough. Mom, Dad, I know you are bitter right now. But in all of this, your child has their life ahead of them. Yeah. Seek their best interest. Not what's best for you, not what's easiest for you, not what's financially, easy for you, but seek their best interest. What is it that would best serve them? Also, seek some change. In other words, You don't have to always be angry, always be bitter, always be, violent, always be aggressive. So seek some change in your own life and seek to connect with your child. They need you to connect with them now more than ever. And I know that you're going through a tough time. I know you're going through a divorce. I know life's not been easy for you. But in all of that, your child still wants and needs that amazing attachment that mom, dad, only you can give them. They desire that from you. And if you do that, I'm hoping and I'm believing they'll start to come out of that depression and make the adjustment that's needed.
Well, there you have it from the Family Answer Man. I hope that this episode, as always, has been helpful and will inspire you to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, and happier family.